one way you can look at graphing tangent, the tangent function, is knowing that tangent is sine over cosine. This is kind of how I look at it, or opposite divided by adjacent. So in the unit circle, if you start at 0, or 1, 0 right here, the ordered pair, it's going to be, tangent is going to be y divided by x. So 0 divided by 1 is 0. So the tangent of 0 equals 0. Now let's go up to over here, pi over 2, or 90 degrees. So the tangent of 90 degrees, or pi over 2 if you're in radians, is y over x. In this case, you're dividing by 0, because it would be 1 divided by 0. So that would be undefined. So what you have with tangent is you're going to have an asymptote, a vertical asymptote, because whenever the x value is 0, you're dividing by 0, so there's going to be an asymptote right there. So different than the sine and cosine function has a period of 2 pi, it repeats itself. This tangent function has a period of pi. Because there's 2 points in the cycle where it's 0. There's 2 points in the cycle where it's undefined. One cycle occurs in the interval from negative pi over 2b to positive 2 pi over 2b. And there are vertical asymptotes at each end of the cycle. So when I'm graphing a tangent function, the first thing I want to do is find the asymptotes. So a tangent function is going to take this shape. Okay, this would be a positive tangent function, and this one would be a negative tangent. So right here we have a positive function, so it's going to look something like this. So this tangent function is going to be squeezed in between 2 vertical asymptotes, and halfway in between it is going to be the x-intercept, unless it's been shifted up. So the key points are, if I can find this vertical asymptote, and I can take the center in between those two, and I know it's going up and down, I can graph my tangent function. So to figure out my vertical asymptotes, I take this part right here, and I set this equal to negative pi over 2, and I set it equal to positive pi over 2. This is going to give me the consecutive vertical asymptotes. So right here, since my denominators are the same, this means my asymptotes, my vertical asymptotes, are going to occur at x equals pi and x equals negative pi. So I'm gonna scale my axis and draw these in. So this is I'll let this be pi, let this be 2 pi, and over here negative pi, and then 3 pi. So if I know the vertical asymptotes, I'm going to draw these in red, are occurring at negative pi, pi, and this one, the next one's going to be 3 pi, then I can sketch my tangent function. So the x-intercept's going to be halfway in between the vertical asymptotes, so I'm going to graph it like this, oops, and it's going to go up and down like this. So this is 2 cycles. One cycle is this part, and the second cycle is this part. Okay, next one, sketch the graph of the tangent curve from 0 to pi. So again, I take this part, 3 pi, and set 3 pi equal to positive pi over 2, and set 3 pi equal to negative pi over 2. Oh, not 3 pi. 3 theta. So I'm trying to solve for theta. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3 to solve for theta. So my asymptotes are going to occur between pi over, my asymptotes are going in increments of pi over 6. So this one, so I'm going to go over here and plot up and down. Oops. So we'll let this be pi over 6. And, well, I actually should have went all the way up to pi. So I'm going to erase that. So this will be pi over 6, 2 pi's over 6, which is pi over 3. 3 pi's over 6, which would be pi over 2. 4 pi over 6, which would be 2 pi over 3. 5 pi over 6, and pi. That way I'm following the directions that I'm supposed to sketch the cycles between 0 and pi. So I'll zoom in a little bit. So my vertical asymptotes, my consecutive vertical asymptotes were negative pi over 6 and pi over 6. So if I keep this pattern up, there'd be a vertical asymptote right here and a vertical asymptote right here. So in between my vertical asymptotes are the x-intercepts. So like right here, right here, right here. It's kind of messy. So then what I can do is, I know that this function was positive. Okay, so it was positive. So I'm going to go up from left to right along here. This 1, this 2, 3, and the start of the next cycle, 4. And then the next one. So this time I'm going to sketch a cycle between 0 and 3. Okay, so I set this numerator, or this part, pi theta over 2. Wait, how is this different than the one up here? Okay, this one up at the top was just theta over 2, and this one is pi divided by 2 times theta. So I'm going to do the same thing. So I set this equal to negative pi over 2, and then I'm going to set the same expression equal to positive pi over 2, and solve for theta. So in this case, if I solve for theta, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. So this would cancel out and these would cancel out. And then I'm going to divide both sides by pi. So you'll have x, or theta, equals -1, and over here it will be +1. So what that means is that you're going to have vertical asymptotes at x equals 1 and x equals -1. So we're going to set up between 0 and 3. So I'll just let this be 1, let this be 2, and this be 3. And then so -1 would be right here. So now I'm going to draw in my vertical asymptotes. So vertical asymptote at 1 and -1. And if I keep up the same pattern, there's going to be one at 3. And my x-intercepts are going to be right here. And I'm going to be going up from left to right. So it's 2 cycles, or 1.5 cycles. So the key thing about graphing tangent is that you just want to make sure that you are graphing the asymptote. So I'm just going to look at another example. So if you have y equals the opposite of tangent of 4x. Okay? So first thing I notice is that this is going to go down from left to right. It's going to look something like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this part, take 4x, and set that equal to positive pi over 2 and negative pi over 2. This is going to help me find my vertical asymptotes. So when I divide both sides by 4, this is going to give me an asymptote of pi over 8, and over here it's going to be negative pi over 8. So when I draw my tangent function, this will be pi over 8, 2 pi's over 8, which is pi over 4, 3 pi's over 8, 4 pi's over 8, which is pi over 2, and over here is negative pi over 8. So now I can draw my vertical asymptotes in, keep the pattern up, and then my x-intercepts are in between the vertical asymptotes, and my function is going to go down from left to right. There's an example of one with a negative out front.